If you ask my grandfather for the torque spec, he would tell you that the German torque spec is good and tight. Alright y'all, today we're going to be doing the rear brakes, and this should be applicable for the 2014, 2015, and 2016 Mazda 6s that have the manual e-brake. If you have the electronic e-brake, you have a e-brake procedure you have to do, and I don't know what it is because I don't have one. I have the Wagner TQ rear brakes, have a 3/8 socket with a 14 millimeter. Then I have the rear caliper compression screw-in kit, which I got off Amazon. But if you don't have one, you can go to your local auto store and you can actually rent these tools for free. You have to pay some money up front for it, but you get it back once you return it. For the rotors, if you want to buy new rotors, you can buy new rotors, but my local O'Reilly store, they'll actually turn these. It used to be $10 a rotor, now it's $25 a rotor. So I'm going to spend $25 getting them turned. Let me show you how to start this, and then you can see if it's something you want to do yourself, or if you just want to take it to a mechanic and pay $200 to $400 for rear brakes. So first thing you're going to need to do is locate the 2 bolts that you need to remove. There is one in the bottom right there. The top bolt is going to be that bolt right there. Make sure your socket is on reverse. Stick it on there like so, and I'm gonna try to do this one-handed. I don't know how well it's gonna work, but give it a couple of hits like so. Take your ratchet, put it on the bottom bolt. Nope. Alright, so the bottom bolt is out. Alright, and once the top bolt is removed, I gotta take the caliper, slide it off, and then it typically, for me anyway, it will sit right there behind the brake shield, and then you just pull the rotor off. It's a floating rotor, it just pulls right off, and then there you have it. Now just remember, if you do sit your caliper behind your brake shield, that when you go to put everything back together, you may need to push it back, because if not, it will rub up against the rotor. You're trying to figure out what the noise is. A word of the wise for people who lose bolts and stuff: take the bolts and just screw them into the caliper. I think all the bolts go the same places that all the socks go. So we have our rotors back from O'Reilly's, getting them turned down. So these are the same rotors. Basically, they just make them flat again. Put them in like a little lathe, and it just skims off a very small amount until it's all flat. The first step is going to be to remove the brake pads. Push them towards the middle, like so. The next thing we want to do is remove the metal hardware. Now, if your brakes came with new hardware, like mine came with new hardware, and I will have the link to the rear brakes that I bought in the description. Mine came with new hardware. I've seen some brakes don't come with new hardware, so if yours don't come with new hardware, you can simply just take it off and clean it, or just leave them in there. But since mine came with new hardware, I'm going to replace the hardware. And to replace it, one easy way to do it is just take a screwdriver. Basically, just take it, pry it up, and pop it out. Like so. And there you go. You have your 2 old hardware out. And now we can put in the new hardware. So I normally take it and just push it in. And once you get it in, just take it and pop it down like so. I don't know if y'all can see it, but it's in there nice and flat. And then you just want to do that for the top side. And now we have both sides of the new hardware in. So what we want to do next is that we want to screw in this caliper. Now this is not like the old school calipers where you just take something like a C-clamp and force it in. This must be screwed in. Now, so I've seen some people take needle nose pliers and other things, but for me, that's too high effort. $25 on Amazon, and you can get you a brake caliper service kit, or whatever this thing is called. And you can do traditional calipers with this piece and the backing plate, and then it screws it in, or you can do all the rear calipers that need to be screwed in. So they have all different sizes that you need. The one for this car is going to be this one here. Now, as you can see, it fits perfect with not a lot of slop in there. So this is what we need. And then we're going to need this handle, and this is nice because I didn't realize this one is magnetic. So when you put the piece on here, it sticks. Now, one thing before you screw in your wheel cylinder is that you want to go to the master cylinder and you want to unscrew the top, and you want to make sure that it's not really full. So you want to unscrew the top so it will kind of help alleviate the pressure for when you screw the cylinder in, because as you screw it in, it's going to push brake fluid up. And that brings me to my second point. If it's already really full, then you would need to suck some of the brake fluid out, because if not, if it's already full, and when you screw in the rear caliper and it pushes up the brake fluid, it is going to spill over. Brake fluid stinks and is very corrosive. So I normally would just loosen it up and just sit it back on, and that will keep any contaminants from falling down into your brake fluid. Basically, just take your tool, get it locked in there, and then I'm gonna see if I can do this with one hand, but you just simply want to turn it. And as it turns, it's like a worm gear, and it will not compress the piston, but it spins the piston, turns the brake piston in. So once you get the piston compressed, you got your brake pads. So the brake pad with the little metal tab on it, that's the wear indicator. So when they get low, they will squeal when you hit the brakes. So that needs to be the inside pad, and then the pad with no wear indicator will be the outside pad. Arms of the pads will go into the slots on the hardware, and the pad will go in like this with the arms on the bottom side. So it's kind of hard to show you all this, but get the pad in the slot on one side, and then just shimmy it in on the other one. Like so. I don't know if y'all can see that, but the top one is in the top hardware, and then it's in the bottom hardware, and then you can just take it and just seat it all the way back onto the brake piston. And then we would do the same thing for the outside, where we would take it, and then once you get it set in the hardware, let me just get some light in there, then you are good to go. Before we grab the rotor, you want to come up here, check your brake fluid. You see how it's a little bit higher than what it was. You'll make sure it's not overflowing, and then put your brake fluid cap back on, because more than likely, if you don't do it now, you're going to forget, and then you're going to lose your cap, and brake fluid is going to be everywhere. And then grab the rotor. Try not to touch the surface, because it's one less thing you have to clean. If you got big hands, go ahead and palm it. The disc brake out the way. Put the rotor on, if you put your bolts in the back like I suggested, go ahead and take those out. All right, so that's the top bolt. And now for the bottom bolt. I don't know what the torque specs are for these, so don't ask. But if I figure it out, I'll put it on the screen. If you ask my grandfather for the torque spec, he would tell you that the German torque spec is good and tight. Your caliper on is bolted down, brake pads are in. If you have any spacers, in my case I have a hub-centric 5mm slip-on spacer, throw that on there, and then make sure you follow whatever the manufacturer says about bedding in the brakes. You do want to make sure that before you go anywhere, before the car moves from the spot it is in, you want to start the car, you want to keep it in park, and you want to pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. The first few pumps is going to go straight to the floor, and that's because it's sending brake fluid from the front to the back. Because you've turned those brake pistons in, you need to pump the brakes so that the brake piston comes out. If you take off and you don't pre-pump the brakes, you gonna have a bad day more than likely. So put the car in park and just pump the brakes, pump the brakes, pump the brakes, and they're going to get firm. Also with the e-brake, because this is for manual e-brake cars, you want to pull the e-brake up until it gets firm. And if you want to test that it's holding, you pull it all the way up, put it in drive, let off the pedal, it should hold. Just if your e-brake works. So pump the brake, turn the car on, pump the brakes until it gets firm. Like I said, if you want to put it in reverse, hit it, make sure it stops, put it in drive, hit it, make sure it stops. Do that before you take off, like I said, and ratchet the e-brake up a couple times until it gets firm and you see that it is holding. But that is it for me today for changing the brakes. Now, take this as not advice. This is just how I'm doing it. I like to show y'all when I do things. So, like I said, if you're looking at this and you do it and you do something wrong, or your car is slightly different, or whatever the case may be, I'm not responsible. I'm just showing y'all what I do with my car. I'm not giving you mechanical advice because I'm not a mechanic. Just showing y'all what I do. Like I said, y'all can determine if this is something that you want to do, or if it's something that you don't have the tools for, the time for, the location for. If it's winter time, it's -40, you know, whatever the case may be, then you may want to take it to an authorized mechanic. But for now, this is it. Make sure all your bolts are tight if you're doing it. If you did take the cap off your master cylinder reservoir, make sure that's back on. Make sure you have enough fluid in it. Bed your brakes per the manufacturer's instructions. Put your wheels on, torque them to 80 foot-pounds, and then 100 miles later, recheck them, make sure they're still torqued. And that is about it. But I will have, in the video description, I will have my magnetic work lights in the video description. I will have the brake pads in the video description. I will have the brake tool in the video description. So, until next time, think, build, enjoy. Oh, and I will have this headlamp in the video description. Peace.